Randy Travis has sold over 25 million records, won 7 Grammy Awards, and has been inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, just to name a few of his accolades. But his greatest success may lie in the greatest battle of his life, surviving a massive stroke. Randy Travis joins me now with his wife, Mary. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Randy, it's so good to see you and how far that you have come. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
I know that speaking is still a challenge, but you're improving every day. So next time I see you, I expect full sentences.
Okay.
Mary, you're going to be helping us out a little bit in this interview. Tell me about July 7th, 2013. What happened that day?
Whew, that's a day we like to try to forget, but that's where we turned a corner and started down a new road. That day we had, it was the day after we had been through an 8-hour meeting. The day before that, Randy had worked out 3 or 4 hours. And he told me that night, he said, honey, I don't feel real good. I can't breathe real good. So I said, let's go to the emergency room. At that point in time, we were feeling like it, you know, just a flu or a congestion. They said he had walking pneumonia or a touch of pneumonia, and they gave us the antibiotics and the things like that that are supposed to help the respiratory. And we went home that night. He couldn't sleep at all. He woke up the next morning and he was kind of gasping for air, and he said, I can't get any air at all. I can't breathe at all. And so I said, well, let's go back to the emergency room, and at that point they said it was full-blown pneumonia. So they were treating him for the pneumonia, but it turned out to be what we found out later was a viral cardiomyopathy that had attacked the heart. And Dr. Michael Mack at the Heart Hospital said that usually happens 4 to 6 weeks after exposure to whatever it was, and it'll come in and do its damage in 48 hours and kind of leave the aftermath, which at this point he had an ejection fraction of 5 in his heart. So it really wasn't the pneumonia, it was the failing heart. It happened so rapidly that he flatlined when we got to the second hospital emergency when they were going to place an Impella to try to assist the heart. And that's where they think, they're pretty sure that the stroke occurred, was when they got him back after 2.5 minutes. They felt like it threw a clot and caused the stroke. After they had resuscitated him, he was in induced coma for the next 72 hours. So they didn't know that he had had a stroke until they pulled him out of the coma, and then they diagnosed it, and it was a massive stroke. We were in the hospital for 5.5 months, and there was several turnarounds, if you will, through this 5.5 months. At that point, of course, they didn't know if they were going to resuscitate him. He resuscitated. Then when they found out that he had the stroke, Dr. Max said, we have to do brain surgery before 6 o'clock tonight. This was about 2 in the afternoon. He said, we have to do brain surgery, take the skull, the flap off, the skull off, to relieve pressure on the brain because the midline is shifting so rapidly. We need to do that by 6 o'clock or we'll lose him. He said it's 1 to 2% chance of survival. I said, well, that's 100% over 0, so let's do it. There was a lot of things they had to do. He was on life support at that particular time. They had to take him off of life support and pray to God that the heart would function through the surgery, and it did. I mean, there was so much of God's grace and mercy in those 4 hours of surgery. Dr. Max said there was about 7 things that needed to go perfect for Randy to survive that surgery, the first surgery. And then we went, you know, down the road a few weeks, and he got to the point where they thought that he was ready to go to rehab. 11 days later, they said, well, we have a terrible staph infection, Pseudomonas and serratia, and we can't get on top of that. And so that was a whole nother turn, and that is when they said, just pull the plug. There's nothing else that we can do. We can't get on top of the staph infection. He had the lungs had collapsed again, and they had put the chest tube in there to try to drain, and then he had a pneumothorax on top of it. It was just one thing after another. It was just, so that was another time that that there was dire predictions, but again it was he wasn't giving up. Randy's made of a fiber that doesn't fray.
And where were you getting that strength from?
I knew that he had the will to live. I knew that God would take him whenever it was his time to go, because it truly is in God's hands. And we had met every challenge as far as an opportunity to go home to heaven. I mean, he had crossed all of those intersections, and for some reason God gave him green lights time and time again. And I just didn't feel like it was a doctor's choice to say it's time to go, because as dire as things had been, it wasn't for us to make that choice. And I was being stubborn, and I prayed to God that if it was his will to take him, to let him go. But the selfish human part of me is, God, please let me have him back any way, shape, or form I can have him. I just wanted him. I'd waited a long time for him, and I turned a 20-year friendship into, he became the love of my life. He was my hero, and he was a living legend, and I wanted him to live on. And I was selfishly, I wanted to be there with him, to walk with him through whatever it was we were going to have to walk through after this series of medical setbacks.
And God answered your prayer.
He answered my prayer, and I'll never forget that. I thank him every day for answering those prayers.
Tell me about the road since then. It's been what now, 6 years?
6 years. 6 years in July.
Lots of rehab, and progress is still happening. So tell me about this journey now. I mean, Randy, I know you couldn't speak probably for the first year, and so just the ability now to communicate more. All of these are gifts, right?
Yeah.
When we first came home from the hospital, we had to take baby steps literally, because he didn't know what a channel changer was, or the TV, or a telephone, or a commode. Just didn't know the basics. And so you retrain your thinking and go, this is like raising a child again. You just start with the reading and the writing and the basic things that we take for granted. I mean, so life changed in an instant, 180 degrees. And I often say we were going down the road 100 miles an hour and hit a brick wall.
Wow.
So you just stop, and you realign your thinking, and you reposition your passions, and you move forward. And we knew that we had another new song to sing. It was just a different one now.
This world is not my home, but it's a pretty good location. I know life is short, but that's another conversation.
Now, the story of Randy Travis is written in this new book here, Forever and Ever, Amen. Tell me about writing this memoir, because I know that must have been a little bit challenging. Ken Abraham helped you write it.
Ken was he was a genius. He was masterful in this writing. Hours and hours he would sit and visit with Randy and ask questions and get confirmations, and then he interviewed. I don't even know how many people he interviewed, telephone interviews and in-person interviews, to get stories from way back from the start.
What advice would you give to people watching right now who are just needing that word of encouragement, or how to get through?
Lean hard on God. Not on our own understanding, because there are things that you go through in life where you don't understand. I know that Randy there was times when we got home from the hospital, he was sad, he was mad, He was everything that it's okay to be.
You got to grieve it.
You've got to grieve it. It's okay to be those things. But he also had that joy and that spirit in his heart, and he had the knowledge of his faith and God's greatness. And so, you know, we went through those times, but we got through them. You get to them and through them, and we did. So, you know, it's just don't think that it's not okay to lean on God when you don't understand. And God's always there. You know, there's tests and there's challenges in life. So lean hard on Him.
That's good words. Thank you so much for your time. It's been such an honor to see you both. And I know myself and everyone watching, we are cheering for you both. We are praying for you both. And there's more good to come. So yeah, just keep fighting.
Thank
Keep
you.
fighting.
Thank you.
Amazing grace, how sweet